Hey there, everyone. It's Kelly from Kelly's Astrology here. We're trying something a little different today, and let's see how this goes with getting set up. So I think there's a slight delay. I'm going to take the headphones out. Welcome. I want to talk a little bit about a couple of things to keep in mind for the month of September, astrology-wise. And I do have a free promo offer that I want to share with you as well, or at least tell you how to get it. This is totally an experiment. I've not done a YouTube live like this before. I hope you can hear me okay. If you're watching, let me know where you're tuning in from via the comments. And if you've got any questions about the astrology of September, feel free to let me know in the chat. So yeah, this is totally new for me. So we'll see how we go. I wanted to record a short video just with a couple of highlights about the astrology of September. And I thought, let's try this and we'll see how we end up. So I can see Kathy is joining us and Nicole is here. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. So many of you know that I have an astrology membership. It's a private subscription that you can sign up for via my website, kellysastrology.com. And we are running a free special offer for the start of September. So if you pop over to my website, sign up to my newsletter and do this before September 10th, before the full moon in Pisces, you will get a special code that will allow you to take a full month's free trial of my monthly membership. And that'll give you a chance to get loads of astrology insights for the month of September, totally free. And if you like the content, if you like the information, if you find it useful, you can stay and join us for the months ahead. So to get that free offer, pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com, sign up for the newsletter, and in the next 24 to 48 hours, you'll get the code that'll give you a free month. Hi, Samantha. I can see you are joining us from San Antonio in Texas. I can see Rain Galena is here. Kathy is in Ann Arbor in Michigan. Welcome. Lotta is joining us from the Netherlands. Hi. Mars54 is from Puerto Lopez in Ecuador. Welcome. And Monica is joining us from Melbourne, Australia, where I think it's quite late at night or very early in the morning, one or the other. But thanks for joining us. And Cynthia is joining us from Oxford, Michigan. So if you're on the live stream here and you've got any questions about the astrology of September, let me know in the chat box and I'll do my best to answer. So I'm going to get started with sharing some info about the astrology of September. Just having a little tech check for now. Okay, great. I just realized, I'm like, now that we've started this, how will we actually end it? But I figured that out. So that's good. Not that we're ending now, but when we get to that time. So September, I'm going to talk about Mercury retrograde. I know many of you will be thinking about this and wondering what it might mean, how to navigate it. We do have Mercury retrograde a few times each year. And this Mercury retrograde starts in the sign of Libra and then will come back to the sign of Virgo. So right now, as you probably noticed through the Mercury retrogrades we've had so far in 2022, they've started in an air sign and then ended in an earth sign. So they're kind of crossing over signs of different elements at the moment. So the details about Mercury retrograde for September. Mercury starts its retrograde by stationing retrograde on Friday, the 9th of September. And that's most effective if you're in Canada and the US. If you're in the UK, Europe, or Australia, Mercury retrograde starts on Saturday, September 10th. Now, Mercury will be at 8 degrees Libra when it begins its retrograde. And for the next, 1, 2, 3 and a bit weeks, about 3.5 weeks, Mercury is just going to be reversing through the zodiac, partly in the sign of Libra and partly in the sign of Virgo. If we think about Mercury retrograde for September. The big theme is that it is affecting the sign of Libra for about 2 weeks. And what's really interesting is shortly after Mercury retrograde in Libra in September moves into Virgo. So Mercury retrogrades for about 2 weeks through the sign of Libra. And then on the 23rd of September, Mercury still retrograde, but returns to Virgo. On September 25th, we have the new moon in Libra. And so it's like we get these 2 weeks of reviewing, redoing, rethinking with Mercury retrograde in Libra. And then the new moon comes along and says, let's get started, specifically about topics to do with Libra. Now, collectively or socially, topics to do with Libra might involve topics that are generally about equality or fairness or justice or injustice. There might be topics to do with legal matters or dealing with the courts and the law. There might also be topics to do with relationships and to do with the balance between self and other. If you're thinking about Libra from a personal perspective, I want you to really think about the topics of the house where you have Libra in your personal birth chart, because really each of us is going to be dealing with a slightly different version of this Mercury retrograde, depending on where Libra is in our personal chart. So I want you to think about rethinking, trying to get organized, even dealing with unfinished business. That's one of the most useful things to do with Mercury retrograde. You might be returning something. You might be remembering something you've forgotten, in addition to reviewing and redoing. So think about how Mercury retrograde can be a little bit of a cleanup or catch-up indicator for the topics of the Libra part of your birth chart. And doing that between September 9 and September 23rd, which are the 2 weeks where Mercury is retrograde in Libra, will mean that you're kind of ready to go when that new moon in Libra comes along Sunday, September 25th, which is all about the fresh start around those Libra topics, both socially and collectively, but especially personally. So I want you to think about that. Have a think about and let me know in the comments, what house is Libra for you? Or do you have any planets in the early part of Libra? Mercury retrograde starts at 8 Libra and then comes all the way back, of course, through 0 Libra. So if you've got any planets in your chart or the ascendant or the midheaven from 0 to 8 degrees of the sign of Libra, then you are going to really feel this Mercury retrograde as well. It's going to be personal to you. Kathy's sharing that Libra is first house for her, and she's got the moon and Pluto there. So if Mercury retrograde is in your first house, you're going to be rethinking a lot of matters to do with yourself. You're going to be learning things about your identity, your needs. You might be rethinking habits or attitudes or behaviors that you have. And you might be wanting to update your style or your appearance or the manner, the way in which you go about interacting with others. So that's just one example for Kathy, who has Libra in the first house. You could imagine if Libra was 10th house for you, then this Mercury retrograde might have a lot to do with career, with professional or public life, and maybe rethinking or having to deal with some crossed wires or misunderstandings in the professional space. You might be questioning your choices about your professional path. You might be resurrecting a professional choice that has been neglected or forgotten for some time. So that would apply specifically if Libra was 10th house or perhaps the midheaven for you. So that's a really personal way of thinking about the Mercury retrograde this month. And then, of course, the latter part of the month has Mercury retrograde in the sign of Virgo. So Mercury returns to Virgo on Friday, September 23rd, still retrograde. And from Friday, September 23rd, right through until October 2nd, which is when Mercury stations direct. So about 10 days, Mercury is back in Virgo. And that period is going to have a lot to do with second chances and getting organized from things that have been delayed or disorganized since late August, which was the last time Mercury was in that latter part of Virgo. So there's a few tips there about how to navigate or kind of how to think about the Mercury retrograde this month. I also wanted to talk briefly about an aspect that I'm sort of weirdly looking forward to that's coming up at the very end of September, and that is Mars in Gemini, trine Saturn in Aquarius. And Mars will be about 19 degrees Aquarius. Saturn will be about 19, sorry, Mars will be 19 Gemini. Saturn will be 19 Aquarius. And that Mars trine Saturn aspect is on Wednesday, the 28th of September. The reason I'm kind of strangely looking forward to that is we know that Mars is spending an extra long amount of time in Gemini. 7 months to do with Mars's retrograde instead of the usual 6 to 7 weeks. So we're all getting this like extra dose of Mars in Gemini this year. Mars in Gemini does have a tendency to get a little bit scattered. Planets in Gemini tend to do that anyway, but Mars, as one of those slightly more chaotic planets, is going to really take that to the extreme. So one thing we all have to be careful about while Mars is in Gemini is staying busy for the sake of being busy, and be wary of not like scattering our energy or our focus so that there's activity, but there isn't movement or progress. And this is where this Mars trine Saturn aspect, I think, can be really helpful, because we know Saturn is focused, Saturn is contained, Saturn has very specific and long-term outcomes that he's focused on. And when Mars is interacting with Saturn, he can benefit from some of that steady, kind of stable energy that says, let's not do everything. Let's pick 1 or 2 things and try to really focus on them and see if we can push them forward. We don't have to finish them, but we can at least move them forward in a meaningful or a substantial way. So effort that is kind of productive or that creates substantial movement or progress is what we can look forward to towards the end of September when Mars trines Saturn. And we want to take all that good guidance from Saturn that we can for Mars, because October, with the aspects that Mars is making, the square to Neptune and then the retrograde itself, Mars is definitely not at its focused or sharp best in October. So we want to use that Mars trine Saturn aspect at the end of September to kind of remind ourselves of what our goals are, check in about the bigger project or challenge we're trying to take. This is something I shared with my members through August when we were talking about Mars coming into Gemini. Think about this Mars in Gemini transit, this extra long 7-month cycle, as a chance to maybe choose a challenge or a project or a goal that might be a little chaotic and a little challenging, but that you're going to be really proud of having achieved by the time we get to March of 2023. That's when Mars will leave Gemini. So there's a few things to think about there. I'm just going to run through the comments quickly and see if there's anything I should address while we are live. I hope you've all enjoyed this experience. I wanted to just kind of do a short check-in here and test out this technology. So it seems to be working. If you are enjoying my videos here on YouTube and you'd like more video astrology content from me, I'd encourage you to take advantage of this free month trial offer that we've got going. So before September 10th, pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com, sign up for the newsletter. I'll put the link below once we're done now, and you'll get that free offer where you can sign up for the month of September and enjoy that without having to pay a cent. So some comments here about where Libra is in your birth chart. Ashley's got Libra on the 12th house and also has the moon in Libra. So if Mercury retrograde is going to be in your 12th house, you're going to be very introspective. You're going to be quite deeply reflective. You might need some time alone or some time in quiet, secluded settings. And you might be really processing some stuff that is really tender or perhaps connected to the past. Mercury retrograde in the 12th house is a great chance to kind of heal or cleanse your thoughts from anything that has been uncomfortable or a little bit upsetting for you. So that's something to think about if Libra is 12th house for you. Elfay is saying that Libra is the midheaven for them. Reen Galena has Libra 6th house. Mars 54 has Libra 8th house with Neptune there. Libra 8th house is a really interesting one because, again, there can be, if you've got Mercury retrograde there in the 8th, there can be that need to kind of review or go back over some psychological material or even do some psychotherapy or psychological healing. But there's also that practical financial side of the 8th house too, of maybe having to update documents pertaining to taxes or other financial matters. So it's a really interesting one, the 8th house, as I'm sure many of you who are learning astrology have discovered. Monica's saying this is a really interesting Mercury retrograde. She's got Mercury retrograde in Libra in the 11th, and the midheavens in the 11th for her in the whole sign chart. And she's just decided to begin studies in constitutional and social law with an emphasis on affordable housing for low income earners. That sounds like such a beautiful expression of your midheaven in the 11th house, which tends to have more of a community focus, but also with the Libra combination there about trying to make things more equitable, more accessible, and that idea of trying to reduce barriers that are creating a lack of fairness in society. So that's beautiful. We wish you all the best with that, Monica. Samantha's saying this is her first year tracking transits, and she has 8-degree Mars. I'm guessing that's Mars is in Libra at 8 degrees. And yeah, that's going to be really interesting. Oh, maybe you're talking about Mars in Gemini. I'm not sure. The Mercury retrograde starts at 8 degrees Libra, and then the Mars retrograde, interestingly enough, will end with Mars at 8 degrees Gemini. And yes, when a planet like Mars stations direct or stations retrograde, they tend to spend a lot of time at that particular degree. So we will see Mars at 8 degrees of Gemini for most of the month of January. So if you've got planets at 8 Gemini, or even at 8 degrees of any of the mutable signs, we're getting a lot of Mars activity in January of 2023. Okay, team. Cynthia's saying she's really thankful for the free offer for the membership. I'm so glad. Maybe you've already signed up and you're already enjoying the content, which is fantastic. If you're on my mailing list already, you know that you've already had access to this info for about a week. So jump on the mailing list over at kellysastrology.com. It's where you get access to all these free and special offers that we don't share anywhere else. I'm going to be really excited to hear how you all navigate the month of September. And if you've got any more comments or questions or even reflections that you want to share about the astrology of September, let me know in the comments below. I'll be back again soon with more. Mercury retrogrades getting me as I'm recording this. Thank you so much for joining me today. And if you don't feel like popping over to my website and subscribing, at least subscribe here on YouTube, where you'll get notifications about new videos when I